The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. It would help if I turned the camera on, wouldn't it? God, seriously, will I ever learn? This is the 255th show. What the hell? Anyway, it's Tuesday night, July 22nd, 2025. Howdy ho from Minneapolis, coming to you cordless. I'm Jim Peters, and welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. Yes, it's episode number 255. Mark your bingo cards at home. How you doing? Hope you had a good weekend. We did not do a show last night. I took the night off because we made a bunch of changes to our studio here, and we basically spent the whole day and night, basically, lack of a better term, fucking around. But I guess we got it. I thought we were going to make major changes. We decided not to. We made minor changes. So, and I'm looking at the camera, and I guess I look pretty good. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Our guest tonight is Nils Grevillius. He's a private detective. I got to ask him about this too, because his publicist said that I can't even remember which one it was. He does not like the term either detective or investigator. I'm going to ask him about that right away. Anyway, he's out of Los Angeles. He's an investigator known for the Wonderland Murders, which happened in the 1980s, but an investigation happened in the 1990s. And he's done all sorts of stuff. He's written like 4 novellas. He's been all over the world with the Army, with the U.S. military. Fascinating guy. Looking forward to talking to him. I just talked to him for 5 minutes before the show started here, and apparently he's in a pretty good mood, and that's good. That's good because we like. I don't know if I'll say I like our guests happy, but we do like them healthy, at least well fed. Because God knows I am. I'm well fed. If you never see me from the waist down, I don't think you have. But yeah, I'm well fed. Tomorrow night, Francis Menton's going to be here. He's a lawyer turned economist. And I'm kind of fascinated by people. We've had several people on this, people who write about, are authors about things that aren't actually in their realm of educational specialty. And he's one of these people. He's a lawyer by trade, retired now, but he writes a blog on economics called the Manhattan Contrarian. He writes out of the West Village of Manhattan. And it's a fascinating blog, and he's a fascinating guy. We have a lot of fascinating people on the show. You know, there are a lot of them. Even though I'm kind of down on humanity, still, there's so many people that, there's a subset of people that are really, really interested. Thursday, Thomas DiLorenzo's here. He's the president of the Mises Institute. Now, one of our regular guests on this program for years has been economist Murray Sabrin, and he's well known at the Mises Institute. He's given talks there. We even run a video of him talking there. Thomas DiLorenzo is the president of the Mises Institute. The Mises Institute involves what's called the Viennese School of Economics, which is extremely laissez-faire, free market. And he's the president of that. So he's got a lot going on. Oh, and yeah, we're all boomers. All those boomers, we all got a lot going on. You know that. We run reruns on Friday. I kind of got this gig. I'm kind of doing like Carson now. I'm doing 3 days this week, Yeah, but I don't get paid either. So yeah, we'll talk about Stephen Colbert later on too, at part 2. We will talk about that. Monday, it's the At Night All Stars, our monthly panel. That's Tim Conaway, Larry Newman, Don Zorro will be here on Monday night. We will do as the old men do, quote unquote, shoot the shit. That's what we do. And we'll take your phone calls during that too. If you want to call up and insult the panel, that's great. They need it. They do need it. Tuesday, Rachel Ehrenfeld is on, and I'm really looking forward to this. She's written a book called The Soros Agenda, Because if I had a list of people I'd want to interview, I think George Soros should be in the top 5 because I don't understand why he does what he does. I don't. This guy made a fortune, just an absolute boatload fortune on the stock market in the United States, and now he's apparently trying to take down the capitalist system, which makes no sense to me at all. That seems completely irrational. So I'm hoping Miss Ehrenfeld can explain this to me and us. I'm hoping. So I'm really looking forward to that. Wednesday, economist Gary, I think his last name is pronounced Gallus. I'm not sure. He's a professor of economics at Pepperdine University. He is also a member of the Mises Institute. I know it's a lot of overkill. I know that. Wait till you hear we got going on Thursday, and that's because that's our 2-year anniversary, July 31st. And now I can't confirm this because I haven't actually heard confirmation from him yet. But our very first guest on this program was Murray Sabrin, economist Murray Sabrin. That was on July 31st, 2023. And I've asked Murray to come back. So we might have 2 economists from the Mises Institute on in a row. So yeah, you're getting biased coverage. Yeah. And you know why? Because I'm a laissez-faire capitalist. That's why. I'm like what you'd call the opposite of a socialist or communist. I am with those people. And that's the reason I have them on. Because you want propaganda on the other side, you can get that anywhere. My only difference here is I'm telling you it's propaganda. Well, actually it isn't, but it's my point of view. And so, yeah, you get that. So that's what we got here going on for the next couple of weeks. We're not taking any calls tonight. We're not going to take any calls tomorrow night. We will be taking calls Thursday night after our interview with Thomas DiLorenzo. We will. Second half of the show on Thursday night, we'll be taking phone calls. You can text us. I didn't run the ticker because I don't want to confuse people. You can text us at 408-458-5088. Get those texts. We get those texts 24/7. I got the thing running right now on the other screen. That's 408-458-5088. And with that, folks, let's put Mr. Nils Grevillius on. Okay? Nils, I was going to say, usually I say join in. Are you in your office in Pasadena? I forgot to ask you.
Well, I'm reasonably close to there, Mr. Peters.
Okay. All right. So let's joining us from Los Angeles. There you go. From the Los Angeles Metro. Now, hold on. Now, okay. You're Nils Grevillius, but I have to ask you this because your publicist told me, I can't remember, that you don't like, which term is it? Private investigator or private detective? Which one is it?
Well, investigator is plain vanilla. Plain vanilla occasionally works, but when I there's no distinction under California law between a private detective and a private investigator. But when I think of a private investigator, I think of the sort of guy in rubber sneakers following you as you step out on your wife, who then gives your wife a big fat bill for videos of you smoking cigars and drinking whiskey with some hooker with dirty feet in the park or something like that. I don't know. Or
okay,
one of those guys who works for the auto club who wants to cut their loss down from a $4,800 loss to a $2,100 loss by getting you to admit that you wrapped your car around a light stanchion drunk at the same place where you met the hooker with the dirty feet. I don't know. That's what a private investigator is. And I don't do cheating husbands, nor do insurance companies, especially like me, to handle their claims. In fact, I'm the last house on the block for them for an insurance company.
Well, Nils, let me ask you, is there actual money in chasing after those husbands? I don't actually know. I mean, is it, and people think there is, but in reality, is there money in that?
Okay, so I live in a place that is the world's largest concentration of people who are simultaneously entitled, aggressive, delicate, hostile, and wealthy.
All right.
Mr. Peters, does Rose Kennedy own a black dress? Yes, there is money in it if I can't stoop that high, okay?
Yeah, okay. All right. You're very entertaining, Mr. Grevillius.
Well, everybody should have a good purpose in life. I've managed to entertain Jim Peters at night.
Yeah,
Look at
that's
me.
right. That's right. Yeah, you got something new. Something new. So, okay. So, how did you get into this business anyway?
I was consistently the very worst kid in every school that I ever attended. There are two people in the Minneapolis metro area who can attest to this. Casey Ward and her brother Chris Ward went to school with me in Terre Haute, Indiana, and they will tell you that I am a moron, and I often was. The teacher would be talking about predicating sentences or something important like that, and my mind would wander. If I could have enlisted in the French Foreign Legion at 13, I would have, Mr. Peters.
But you did
I
enlist,
found
you enlisted in the U.S. military at some point, right?
I did on my 17th birthday, and it sort of coincided with me being disinvited from a very well attended public high school in Pasadena, which is one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, I couldn't drop out fast enough. My parents were ruling class progressives. My father's family were well established Swedish musicians and artisans, that sort of thing, and my mother's family, part of the Canadian American industrial aristocracy of New York and Ontario. And I was supposed to attend Dartmouth and do all of these things. I couldn't quit it fast enough.
Yeah.
Chris Rock said that GED stands for Good Enough Diploma, and I got on my first tour in Korea while the rest of the battalion was on the DMZ. Okay, that's the story, man.
All right. I worked in Pasadena for several years. It is a very pretty place. And also, I bought your book, A City of Devils, but I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I did purchase it. But just thumbing through it, my question is, first of all, when does that book actually take place?
Well, I'm kind of harkening back to a different era when the older part of Pasadena was Skid Row. And there were a lot of interesting drinking bars, but it still attracted people like Richard Feynman, the theoretical physicist, to
Yeah.
some of the dive bars. And my father was part of that milieu. The artist Joe Ferris, the artist Judy Chicago was part of that. And as a teenager, I found it all interesting. I met Jerzy Kosinski, the writer of The Painted Bird, at a dive bar called Vitali's in Pasadena when I was 15 or
So
16.
is this like around the 1950s, 60s? Because by the 80s, it was
1970s is really it. And the book that you've purchased, I wrote a long time ago. I've got my professional memoir coming out in June of 26, and that's The Last Lawman, and it's true to life. It's a true crime memoir of a man, myself. I was in the Pinkerton service after Army counterintelligence, and it's about the cases that I've worked, everything from picking up bail jumpers and operating in Mexico and crushing con artist teams as a Pinkerton agent, being undercover, doing industrial undercover work, interrogating men who have been embezzling, surveillance work, things like that. That's the work that I've done.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump around here because you just said something that made me think of this. So this is kind of on my outline. Why do people do stupid criminal things other than the profit motive? I mean, it seems like everybody seems to think they can get away with it. Hardly anyone ever does.
Because they have gotten away with it.
Oh,
The reality is 99% of the property crimes are committed by 2% of the criminals, and they get caught for maybe 3 of their crimes for every 50 or 100 that they do. And they're
oh,
working the
okay.
numbers, particularly in a big area.
Yeah.
Uh, Los Angeles is now down below 50% for solution on murder cases, particularly body dumps. If you dump the body somewhere else other than where you killed them, you've exponentially increased the chances that they'll never get around to finding you, even if
That's
they find you.
that's frightening, Nils. Really? You have a better chance now than not of getting away with murder, huh?
Well, I mean that's what we voted for here in Los Angeles,
Yeah, it is. That's
Mr.
right.
Peters.
It is.
Yeah, we voted our way into this, and the cool kids, they embrace decrepitude, filth, and crime. When Cisco, the heroin dealer, gets aired out on a bus bench, the hipsters will hold a seance and a memorial for him and act like Cisco was the coolest guy in the world so they can virtue signal over their own street cred, that sort of thing. They all do illegal drugs, or many of them do. We have 6 fresh dead bodies at the morgue every day of the week from fentanyl and heroin overdose in Los Angeles County. We demanded this.
Yeah, they did. I won't say you did, but they did. I mean, and I have a lot of now. I'm going to ask you another question, which sounds redundant and stupid, but I'm actually serious here because I have a lot of political people on the show. Why do people keep voting this shit in? What is there? Because there's no ramifications to failing. Is that the reason?
It's endorphins. It can't be explained any other way other than endorphins, Mr. Peters. They want to feel good about themselves. And there's a meme that goes around of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones being hoisted aloft by brown people after being rescued from slavery by her. And so they all want to feel as if they've rescued the downtrodden, the racial minority, the sexual minority, that sort of thing. And they want to enact Santa Claus laws so that all the little children get a daily visit from Santa Claus. And it's not limited to Los Angeles, Mr. Peters. I was in Des Moines, Iowa, registered to vote even during the 2008 caucus, and I witnessed the Democrat caucuses in Des Moines, and they were capering around as if it were a square dance and that they were voting for Santa Claus goodies, their health care, and they wouldn't have to work so much. And if you really think about what socialism is, it is an attractant, a constantly self-replicating political bacillus for men who don't want to compete. And you were talking about Soros a minute ago, and what the nexus of capital and socialism is. You have a lot of men who are very successful in business and enterprise and commerce who want to kick the ladder away from the wall after they've scaled it, okay? And they don't want to compete. And so the most deleterious effects of socialism and monopoly are identical, the artificial murder of competition. And competition is important.
And is that what it is? Because that I got that part about the fact of taking the ladder away after you've already scaled. But in some ways, I don't understand why a guy like Soros cares. I mean, he's got his $15 billion or whatever the hell it is. Why does he care?
He wants to live beyond the grave, Mr. Peters. He wants people to worship him like Santa Claus, that he reordered the world,
Yeah.
that he was the hidden hand behind all of this benevolent Marxism, and people like Mamdani and Lexi Banana and that sort of thing can all count on George Soros to underwrite their campaigns and that sort of thing. It's all about the endorphins, and it's politics by subscription. If you sign on with their campaign and you do a little bit of street work for them, that sort of thing, you've bought shares in Santa Claus Toy Factory, okay?
Yeah.
And you're a good person. You're really a great person if you do that.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
know, you can get a garbage degree from some state-funded asshole factory and go out and be the Pied Piper of stupidity, and everybody will love you. And you can live in squalor and filth and call yourself cool. You're living on the 3rd floor walk up because the elevator's broken and your kids go to some violent public school, and you ride public transit and you wear your little summer scarf and that sort of thing. And you're just a cool, if you hyphenate your last name, if you're a semi-female or something like that, and dye your hair a goofy color, and you're different. Now, one of the signature characteristics of the psychopath, Mr. Peters, is the need to be treated specially just to feel normal.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm going to run another theory by you too. Where you're talking about coming to Des Moines and voting, about the fact that yes, this leftist disease is everywhere. But I'm starting to play with the theory that a woman at Breitbart mentioned a few weeks ago in a column, almost as a happenstance, but I'm starting to think she's onto something about the fact that maybe we're experiencing in the United States basically more or less a mass mental illness. I mean, we've always had leftists in society, but this has gotten to absurd, ridiculous levels. And I'm starting to think that maybe literally there's a bunch of people that are very literally crazy.
Oh, you're not incorrect. Think about what it is that they have to do in order to maintain power and control. They rely on the constant, consistent, relentless deterioration of objective reality. I have
Yeah.
a very good friend who's an expert in Cuban and Caribbean music who lives in New York, who grew up going to the UN school, very well educated, used to write for the Village Voice, and she married a Cuban jazz musician, that sort of thing. And she finally had enough of all of it. And she calls it the serial distortion and deterioration of objective reality. And if you won't go along with it, you'll lose your job, you'll lose your scholarship, your friends, your lifelong friends, the people that you thought loved you and adored you, who voted on the other side, start to say things to you. Well, Jim, we really can't have you around at this picnic because our colored friends or friends of color or whatever uh, will be offended and they'll be fearful. And what about our Guatemalan housekeeper? If she finds out that you voted for that man, we couldn't have you around. I mean, I wish you'd unfriend me on Facebook and save me
Oh,
the.
Nils, I've already gotten that. And the thing is
Well,
amazing. I'm a former liberal. I admit it. I am. I'm going back 20 years now, but no, I am. I'm a former liberal. And the other thing I want to ask you too is why, I've been waiting for somebody to do a survey on this and no one's ever done it. How many current conservatives are former liberals? Because I'm guessing it's about half. And so my guess is, why do some people like your friend or me, I'm not trying to give myself any credit here, why do some people kind of wake up and some don't?
Well, I mean, there's the old joke about getting mugged. You know, the today's conservative was a liberal who got mugged yesterday. What if you lived in Altadena and you were a tithing, subscribing member of the Democrat cult, and you voted for Gavin Newsom and all of the Santa Claus goodies of the California Democrats, and you had a beautiful California bungalow in Altadena. And when the fires came, nobody gave you an evacuation order. Nobody let you know because the power was out and the cell phones were down and the firemen and cops weren't sent around to tell you to evacuate. What if you lost every effing thing that you had to that fire? You know, and there you are sitting at the Pasadena Convention Center the next day. You don't have a house anymore. Your collection of Sylvia Plath novels has gone up in flames, you know, and maybe you learn, but there's just as good a chance that you'll blame it on global warming because they'll tell
Right.
you to.
Well, right. That's right. And that's the thing. But, I don't, I read a thing years ago and, and you've been involved, duh. That's why you're on the show. You've been involved in an investigation. Uh, that somebody did a survey, a long-term survey of children who had experienced extreme trauma. They'd either been tortured in political situations overseas, or they've been, they were extremely treated extremely badly as children for some reason or another. And it was like a bunch of them. I can't remember, several, like 30,000. And these organizations, they followed them into adulthood, like 50 years. And they came to the conclusion after doing this study for like 50 years, they could not tell why half of these kids basically recovered and went on to lead good, productive, happy lives, and the other half didn't. And they couldn't come up with any variable that explained that,
Okay, so Carl Jung, who is recognized as the father of analytic psychiatry, sometime in the 50s or 40s was in correspondence with a man about alcoholism. And Carl Jung said that there are some things, well, I'm paraphrasing Dr. Jung, forgive me. There are some things that science and scientific medicine and medicine science cannot accomplish, and that is the exclusive province of God.
Yeah. Well,
Men, men reach a point somewhere between 25 and 28 where it's either wallow in it and be that for the rest of your life, or change,
Yeah,
adapt, change.
right.
And most men overcome it. The ones who do not are a minority. Some overcome it much later in their 40s or 50s. They go through male menopause or something, or they do a jolt of imprisonment. And in prison, they might come to identify with their jailers more than the men that they're locked up with. I've seen that. Uh, many many women get yanked to reality by having children and actually caring about the children that they have and
I've
realizing,
seen that. Yeah.
and so the things that the characteristics in a normal man or woman, other than just conscience, so that you can tell somebody is normal and not a psychopath, Mr. Peters, is sacrifice and accountability. That's how you can identify a mature male, is that he will sacrifice for his family. He will be accountable to his wife, to his children, to his employer, that sort of thing, to the extent that he has to be, unless he's self-employed, and then it's total sacrifice and it's total accountability. I've even known men of the criminal class who are somewhat like this. They, at a certain point, they just give up on criminality because they know that they're endangering their families. And I've seen a lot of criminals in my day. I really have.
Nils, I didn't quite get from your biography. Have you had a lot of interface with quote unquote organized crime, or is it mostly just individual? I really don't know. Forgive me.
Okay, well, yes, I've
Well,
had a
hold on.
lot of.
I
Oh,
know,
sure.
I know you did the Wonderland Murders, and I guess that was organized crime, right?
Okay, so let's define organized crime,
Yeah,
Mr.
please
Peters.
do.
We have
Yeah, let's do it.
La Cosa Nostra, which is the Italians,
Right.
and some of the interplay between them and the Jews, like the Purple Gang out of Detroit, and Bugsy Siegel, and Lepke Buchholder, and Meyer Lansky. Well, I think to the Jewish members of organized crime in that era, it was a way out, a way up. And to the guys who romanticized La Cosa Nostra, it was a way of life. And then in Los Angeles and San Francisco and Bakersfield and Fresno, we have La M, the Mexican mafia, which is
Uh-huh.
largely prison based. And they have equity in the California Democrat Party. They're members of the California legislature and other elected officials who have family members in the Mexican mafia.
Right. I understand that. Yeah. I'm personally Albanian, so I know all about the Albanian mob in New York. I know all about that. They'll cut you, man.
Right. And so non-traditional organized crime might include like the Gypsy Jokers or the Hells Angels, that sort
Right.
of thing.
Right.
During the day, they're respectable tradesmen in the film and television industry, or construction guys, or whatever. But on the weekends, they strap on their colors, they climb aboard their motorcycle, and they tilt at each other like knights on horses. They don't kill civilians; they go after each other. I mean, you can see that shootout in Laughlin from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's another example. How about gypsies? Are gypsies non-traditional organized crime transient criminal groups? Yes, they are often. Not all gypsies are criminals,
Uh-huh.
but there are a plurality of Romanes speaking gypsies who are engaged in serial fraud, flim flam, sweetheart swindles, that sort of thing. They change identities, they cross borders. They're very gifted at it. And then we have their analog within the Gaelic world, the Irish, English, and Scottish travelers, who are not gypsies but have the mien of gypsies. A lot of people mistake them for gypsies.
Uh-huh.
So yes, I've had a little contact with organized crime, Mr. Peters.
Yeah. Do you want to explain the Wonderland Murders to people? This was in 1981. I was living in LA in 1981, and I got to be honest, Nils, I don't remember hearing about it, but I was like disconnected. So,
Well, there was an adult film star who was justifiably famous named John Holmes,
yeah,
John Curtis Holmes.
right. He was
And
very famous.
and yes, and John was a cocaine addict, and he was regularly scoring cocaine from a few people. One of them was a mobster named Ed Nash, real name Adel Nasrallah, ethnic Palestinian. And then the other people were the Wonderland Gang, and the Wonderland Gang were all heroin addicts who were doing drug rips, which is a high stakes game in the criminal world. You're robbing drug dealers, and it's in order to support your habit and whatever else.
Are you robbing the drug dealers for money, drugs, or both?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe just because you want to die. Because
well, I don't know.
You're robbing people who don't call the police and say, I had a couple of keys of blocaine in the closet next to my wife's hairdryer. And Jim Peters came over with his duck hunting shotgun like the good Albanian criminal that he is. And he jacked me up and he took my kilos of cocaine. I'd like your 5 best detectives on the case right now.
You don't do that. No.
And the police for their, the police say, they might actually, if you do a drug rip, they might arrest you for doing it if they know you did it. And they might, if they know that you are a drug dealer and you got robbed, they might serve a search warrant to see if all of it got hauled away, things like that. They might file a report on your behalf, which happened in the Wonderland case later. But so Holmes sets up Nash to get robbed because Nash had cut him off. He'd overextended his credit. He liked to smoke cocaine, all this. And after when the Wonderland guys went and robbed Nash, Nash didn't know who they were. They pistol whipped him and his bodyguard and humiliated him and stole his cocaine and some guns and some money and went back to Wonderland Avenue to divvy it up. They gave Holmes a cut of it, but they didn't give Holmes what Holmes wanted, which was most of it or whatever. Holmes was kind of risk averse. He didn't want to ruin his good looks for the films he was in. So after Holmes ran out of blocaine and money, he just, whether Ed Nash found him or he found Ed Nash, he says, I know who robbed you, and sets up the next part of it, which is where Ed Nash sends a few guys over to beat everybody to death. And Holmes is the one who got them in by getting on the intercom and saying, hey, I have some money and I need to buy some of that blocaine from you.
Yeah.
And so there were 4 people.
Nils, did they intend to actually kill them, or did they just beat them up so badly that they died?
Well, when I take 1-inch steel water pipe that's threaded at the end and I hit you in the head 26 times with it while you're jacked up on heroin and you can't fight back, it's not because I just want to, teach you a lesson.
Right. Okay.
Make it so that you behave better. The next time you rob my boss, you won't pistol whip him and his black bodyguard.
Okay. I'm stupid.
Next time, leave a little bit for us, that kind of thing. No, so.
All right, sorry.
So yeah, I think there was some mens rea, which is a fancy word for criminal intent there. And so the next day, the guys from LAPD, Tom Lang and Bob Souza, had an informant, meaning a member of the Wonderland gang who had missed getting killed, who told them who had done what to whom and all this. So they knew the next day who had done it, and it took 20 years to round him up. Or 19 years, and it's because of the tentacles of power that Ed Nash had at City Hall. He had a bunch of licensed enterprises with liquor licenses, nightclubs, that sort of thing. He was very popular because he was a vivacious host to anybody from the city who might come in, from the lowest patrolman up to the mayor, maybe. I don't know that Mayor Bradley was cavorting with him, but when somebody pointed out that the city fire commissioner was also Ed Nash's personal attorney, the mayor didn't have a problem with it. And one of the crimes Ed Nash was being investigated for was arson for profit. So the city fire commissioner it's kind of contraindicated. So that's a fancy word for conflict. There was a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
So that's the story in a nutshell. And then there was a federal agent from the ATF who was on the organized crime strike force, who was secretly working to protect Ed Nash. And when he got caught and fired, he filed for his private investigator's license, and the return address was 6121 Hollywood Boulevard, which was the address of Ed Nash's Seven Seas nightclub. So, it was prima facie, as they say in Latin. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, okay,
uh,
the murders happened in 81, but you didn't get involved till like the early 90s, right?
well, 97, I was working with Bob Souza, great retired homicide detective. Mr. Peters. It was even with the extensive experience I had in the Pinkertons and Army counterintelligence. This was like taking a master's course in hitting from Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how smart, wise, experienced Lang and Souza were. They wrote their own book on the Wonderland Murders, which is a great book. They're great men, and they worked the case inside out. So I was working with Souza at an investigative company doing crime suppression investigations, and we got to talking about it, and I started looking into it. And I did some things. I found some witnesses that hadn't been turned before. And Ed Nash had been acquitted of murder in two separate trials. And it was because he bought a jury. And then the second go around, the judge wouldn't admit evidence from the prior trial. So he got acquitted. And Holmes got acquitted in his own trial because the jury just thought, why should we convict John Holmes? They were convinced he was involved, but the question of the jurors was, why isn't Ed Nash in here? That sort of thing. So
Yeah. Right.
that's the story in a nutshell, and I don't want to take away from their work.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Well, of course, that's why you're here. I want to go back. I want to go back to your military service. So,
Right.
all right. First of all, are you still under any sort of security oaths or anything like that? Or just
Oh no, I'm an old man now. I enlisted in 1980, and I did 3 tours in Korea. I started out as a scout in the infantry, and eventually became a counterintelligence man. And then I took my leave of the Army after almost 7 years and worked private jobs, that sort of thing for the civilians, and then wound up at the Pinkerton service. And there was also a bondsman in Pasadena, Frank Rapetti, who was a fantastic guy. And I also worked a bit for his sons, also great guys, picking up bail jumpers. And uh, you asked me earlier how I got into the profession.
yeah.
If I worked at a bank, all I would do, Mr. Peters, is fantasize about how to tunnel in over the weekend.
Uh-huh.
I'm not cut out for that kind of work. But this has been good and frictive for me and that sort of thing. And so in the Army, I was always in trouble, like I was always in trouble in school, but not like I got court-martialed or anything. I was always just one step ahead of somebody wanting to discipline me. And at the same time, my work was really good.
Right.
So I could get out of trouble that way.
Yeah,
But
you could slide, couldn't you? Because they like
well,
you.
a bit. I mean, there's only so much they'll put up with. And honestly, I was an immature man. And it took me a while to sort my life out. But I did my time, and when I got out, I was attracted to the kinetic, to what other people wouldn't do, and that sort of thing. I briefly worked at a collection agency where I was expected to turn 8 cases a day, and I don't mean collect bills. I mean identify who did this to this company and find out where they are and what they own. And you have to be ruthless in sorting through microfilm and property records and crisscross phone directories, which were the old analog paper reverse
Oh,
phone
right.
directories. And so it was really another great course in making decisions on who people are, identifying who people are. If you don't know who someone is, you can't identify that. You can't investigate their background.
Well, Nils, do you think digital technology of today has made it easier or harder?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. Right. So the thing is,
Okay. So
yeah,
it's
go
like
ahead.
trying to drink from a fire hose.
Uh-huh.
Uh, th- but any device of security created by man can be defeated by man, and
Yeah.
that's an essential thing they teach you in counterintelligence. Any method of encryption can eventually be broken down. Any clever lock can be picked eventually. Um, And if you could, the most important part of being a computer hacker, I'm not a hacker. I operate kinetic and analog, but any good hacker will tell you all of their best hacks come from working a human,
Oh
getting
yeah.
a human to give them a password.
I'm
Or
a
getting,
programmer. It's called social engineering. That's right.
yes. So one of the tricks, well, it's not a trick, it's a whole thing that I was indoctrinated in the Army, is something called neuro-linguistic programming. And if you ever watched Mad Men, much of advertising is neuro-linguistic programming,
Yeah.
where you're using the correct combination of words to establish rapport and to eventually lead someone to do something that might not necessarily be in their interest, like buy Tide instead of gain or betray their country.
Right.
So,
Right.
things like that. And so, um, once I was out of the Army and I was working for the Pinkerton service, I had great experience in surveillance and locating men, identifying men, figuring out what they do. And then I started learning about psychopaths. I read the books of Carol Chessman and Jack Henry Abbott and Kim Philby. And they're all psychopaths. And they all have these things that are in common to them. And I learned how they communicate in neuro-linguistic programming, how to identify a psychopath through his writings and the words that he says, and then comparing them to what he's actually done.
Well, for the layman and the people just watching this, how do they communicate that sort of thing?
Well, I'll give you a pedestrian example. Often they communicate in the third person. I was watching an episode of the First 48 on A&E, and detective in Bug Tussle, Alabama, or something's quizzing some young stud gang member about a murder that the gang member had done, and the gang member wants to do two things. He wants the street cred for the murder, but he doesn't want to ride the lightning. He
Right.
doesn't want to be in the chair. And so instead of saying, I was upset with Jim Peters, so I decided to knife him in the gut 15 times, what he said was, that man got stabbed. He's removing himself at the same time that he's taking credit. He
Yeah.
doesn't want responsibility.
Right.
He wants the detective to know what a tough SOB he is, and he'll never make a case on me. And if you do make a case on me, I love prison. Prison's like Club Med for guys like me. That's what he's saying.
Oh my God. That's quite an example. That really is. Holy shit. Hey,
I'm not a hairdresser, Mr. Peters. I'm a detective.
Yeah, I understand. You're talking about now manipulating people, and that gets me to the extreme of that, which would be the Manchurian candidate scenario. And are you familiar with the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy?
I am.
About how it's crazy, because I mean, here Saran standing right in front of him 3 feet away with a pistol and shoots, but the coroner said he got shot from behind 2 inches from his head. I mean, it's like, and then there's these things about this woman in a polka dot dress running out of the building saying, we shot him, and it's like, first of all, is any of this true or bullshit? Is this bullshit, and can this be done? Sirhan says he has no memory of this to this day.
Sirhan's attorney says that Sirhan did it. Okay.
All right.
Here's the problem that I have with the human recollection. People are frail and delicate, Mr. Peters. And when they get into a stressful situation, their brain sees things that aren't there and interprets things after the fact. And it's to make peace with what occurred. That's the simplest way I can describe it. You and I could take half of our studio audience tonight and take them out to the streets of Minneapolis and gun a few men down, and then demand that they write a statement as to everything that they saw, and the statements wouldn't add up. There was a man in a purple shirt and there was a man in a blue shirt, and
Right.
One wore glasses and the other had a monocle, and
right.
one was bald and the other had a big mustache, and that sort of thing.
Well, could I even proffer that the people who killed Kennedy kind of they bet on that, the fact that 300 people are in the plaza and they all had a different story? Isn't that pretty much the you can actually like kind of count on it?
Right. But what Sirhan and Oswald have in common is they were the face of Antifa in their respective days.
Uh-huh. Oh,
They
well,
they were they were both identically motivated. They were hardcore leftists who were taking direct action in the classic mode of Lenin. Um, Oswald had defected to the Soviet Union and then got bored and came home and got involved in the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. He attempted to assassinate General Walker before he
right,
killed Kennedy. He used the same rifle.
right.
And after leaving the Dallas Book Depository, he murdered a Dallas police officer, probably en route to meet with whomever it was who he thought was going to pick him up after doing his deed, whether it was Cuban intelligence or some other hardcore American Marxist or something like that. Now,
Right.
um, the the conspiracy theories started flowing from a writer named Mark Lane, who was also a congressman briefly and a lawyer. And he started trying to acquit Oswald after Oswald got murdered by Jack Ruby. And he wasn't really trying to acquit Oswald as much as he was trying to acquit the hard left and make it look like the CIA had murdered President Kennedy. Now, I have a theory as to what the CIA's involvement was.
Let's hear it.
They had him under surveillance after his visits to Mexico City, to the Soviet embassy and Cuban embassy. And James Jesus Angleton wanted to know who the hell he was meeting with in the United States, who might have been Cuban, Russian, American, East German, whatever. And so the CIA had the helm and was supposed to be watching him and failed to put together that he was going to assassinate the president of the United States. They didn't take him seriously as a threat. And that, I think, is the CIA's role in this.
Interesting. I had Robert Tannenbaum on. He was the deputy counsel for the House's Select Assassination Committee. This would be the second one, not the Warren Commission. And he's convinced. Matter of fact, he says that he came up with irrefutable proof that Oswald didn't act alone. And this is, I want to point out to people, and I've talked about this in the past. It's not that Oswald didn't do it. It's like he was involved, but that Oswald had help, and specifically that there were more than one shooter in the plaza, which means that there was some conspiratorial intent. But you don't buy that, huh?
I don't think there was another shooter. I think he did have help in terms of support. Somebody who was going to meet with him afterwards and whisk him out of the country potentially.
Uh-huh.
But it was Oswald's rifle. The shots that were made were not impossible. The experts working after the fact are working on copies of copies of copies of copies. And you know how when you take a Xerox and you Xerox a photo over and over, you distort it. Okay.
Yeah.
There were 2 shots fired from the front at 75 meters. And he was shooting downward at a slow moving target that wasn't moving laterally. I could make that shot. You could make that shot. It's only 75 yards. Okay.
Right. I had a friend of mine who grew up on a farm now you can't do that. But before you used to actually, they will let you look out the window, at this Texas book depository. And he said he looked out the window and saw that X on the street. And he said, I could do that. It was absolutely simple. He said, I'm a farm boy. He said it was way easier than he expected it to be. That's what he said.
Right. So all of this has aided the hard left in obscuring their role in this. The hard left has been an incubator of political violence. I mean, look at Luigi Mangione and Elias Rodriguez and Thomas Crooks and this ridiculous wacko who attempted to take Trump out at Mar-a-Lago, that sort of thing. That the hard left is an incubator of political violence. That's not to say the hard right isn't also, but what we're dealing with here is the hard left. Sirhan was another member of the hard left. It was his pistol. 22 bullets are high velocity and they fragment. That's how you account for the other holes in various things. Some people recall that he was in front of Kennedy. Some people say that he was to the side, a woman in a polka dot dress. I mean, you've got the recollections of people who were traumatized by what it was that they saw. And at
Right.
the time, he said, "I shot him."
Yeah.
Okay, so and later Sirhan's attorney stipulated that Sirhan had shot Senator Kennedy, presidential candidate Kennedy. Here's an interesting fact about Mark Lane, the man who wrote the screenplay for Executive Action, which was the big conspiratorial movie. And I think that Oliver Stone was working from some of Mark Lane's books, all of this stuff. Mark Lane was Jim Jones' personal attorney. He
No
was
shit.
he was the last man to see Jim Jones just before Jim Jones ordered the assassination of Congressman Leo Ryan in Guyana and then wiped out all, 1,100 of his followers in the jungle.
Oh my God. I didn't know
And
that.
Jim Jones was another hardcore Marxist disguised as a reverend.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this just before we went on about talking about the woman here and the state senator in Minnesota here that just got killed by this guy. What's his story? I don't know. Where's he coming from?
I don't think he's politically motivated. I think that there's a very good chance that Bolter is suffering from cannabis psychosis. He had a relatively stable employment history, was self-supporting, involved in ministry and all of this other stuff.
Yeah. Did he
And
even have a criminal record? I don't know if he did even.
none,
No.
zero,
Right. Right.
none whatsoever. And suddenly he goes like this. Well, one of the things I'm seeing in Los Angeles is a lot of cannabis psychosis arising of high grade cannabis and synthetics. And it strikes suddenly where they go into paranoid schizophrenia. And then when you look at this letter that he left for Kash Patel in his car, he's clearly not in his right mind, whether he's right wing, left wing, liberal, anti abortion, pro abortion, whatever. It doesn't matter because he's dealing with a deck that's marked in a way that we can't see.
I should have mentioned this earlier, Nils, about the fact that when I was talking about the fact that maybe there's a whole bunch of people in America that are crazy. One of the theories is that we have more and more people suffering from cannabis psychosis. That's one of the theories, that too many people are doing, and it's become too hardcore. I mean, when you and I were kids, it was not, it's way, way stronger now. I don't know if I have to tell you that. I don't use it, but I understand, you know.
Well, I'm not one who partakes. I will say that you are correct and that it is a scourge. Here in Los Angeles, we have dispensaries everywhere. I've had 3 missing persons cases in the last 18 months involving people who were otherwise normal and suddenly lapsed into paranoid schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder who were using high grade cannabis. The respected, noted author, who was a good friend of mine, Evan Wright, took his own life 1 year ago today. And I believe he was in the throes of cannabis psychosis. This is a man who wrote Generation Kill.
Yeah, actually, I'm familiar with him. I mean, I don't know him, but I know who he is.
He
Yeah.
was, yeah, it's horrifying. And uh,
Okay, so
uh,
let me ask you this though. Because I'm kind of a paranoid conspiracy theorist, and I admit it. Do you, do you think this is the legalization of this stuff is part of a grand plan to destroy society?
how could it not be? But they don't see it as destroying it. They think of it as liberation. Think about the other horsemen of this apocalypse. Searchable internet porn has become software for young minds.
Yeah, right.
How about a narcotic that is so effective for the cartels that they make 100 times the profit that they made from heroin without any of the exposure from having to run an agricultural operation employing hundreds or thousands to harvest opium. They can smuggle the same amount of abuse level narcotics in a spare tire that used to take an entire truck.
Yeah,
And the difference between relieving your anxiety and having a lovely high if you're a narcotics addict and dying is measured in millimicrodoses or
Right.
whatever. So
Right.
yes, there are certain things going on. Here is another one. Artificial intelligence and social media. Uh, Aldous Huxley, in an interview with Mike Wallace, an incredulous Mike Wallace, maybe in 1956 or 57,
Uh-huh.
predicted the rise of use of technology to control the minds of humans. And what if the reward cycle is fired by the flashing lights and the clicked likes on your Facebook or X post or Instagram and that sort of thing? And then what if you're a deficient personality and you have problems in life and you need a friend? And so your phone suddenly has a little friend in it, like in Blade Runner 2049, like a hologram almost, but it's someone who's real to you because it
Right.
communicates with you
Right.
and affirms your aggression,
Right.
right? The way that you make somebody into a psychopath is random reward for negative acts. So it's like
Oh,
yanking the
Jesus.
lever on a slot machine. It
Nils,
fires the endorphins and it
that's
rewires the
brilliant.
brain.
I never thought of that. That's a brilliant statement. You're absolutely right. Random rewards for negative acts. Holy shit, that'll make you nuts.
Right. Well, a psychopath isn't nuts. They're rational to the extent that they know what they're doing is wrong, but they like it.
Uh-huh.
It's rewarding. The endorphins fire. How do you think Brian Koberger felt when he tiptoed out of that house after stabbing 4 young people to death?
He probably had a giant heart on.
Right. Okay. So my belief is that he had a thing for one of the young women in that house,
Right.
and he was either rejected or more likely he perceived he would be rejected.
Right. Right.
And to foreclose the hurt and pain and anger of the rejection, he killed her and killed her friends.
Yeah. Matter
So
of fact,
he's
I don't
never, these people will never laugh at him.
no, and I don't forgive me, but I don't even know if he knew any of them, right? Or if he did, it might have just been extremely in passing, right?
Only on in the most oblique sense.
Right. Right.
But a personality like that, it doesn't matter,
Right.
you know. And the reason why he pleaded and won't do an allocution. Okay, so what an allocution, in case you don't know, is a recitation of why and what and to whom and everything.
Right.
And this was a crucial thing missing from the James Earl Ray plea, a guilty plea. The judge should have made him do an allocution where he said, I murdered King with this rifle and this is who paid me to, or I did it entirely on my own and this is why. Well, the judge and the prosecutors are letting Koberger off relatively lightly, if you ask me. And I believe that Koberger will spend the rest of his adult life doing 2 things: defending his virginity and trying to get out of prison based on the fact that he didn't really do it and then he got forced into the confession. And then underneath it all, the one thing I think he's trying to hide from his parents, who seem to be perfectly innocent, they're mental health professionals, okay?
Yeah.
He doesn't want his mother and father to hear a recitation by the prosecutor of his pornographic search history in his phone and his computer and his laptop, whatever. Because that's the keys to the kingdom with him.
Right.
He's 96% in the Brian Koberger world and 4% in our world, just to the
Yeah.
extent necessary to do what it is. And without modern DNA technology, that sort of thing, it would have taken years to identify Koberger, and he would have killed over and over and over again.
Oh,
Classic serial killer.
right. I assume without DNA, he probably wouldn't have gotten caught. It's like, you
Right.
know,
Yeah. He'd
yeah,
never tell on himself.
right. Just, do you have any thoughts on the Epstein thing?
Yes,
Like,
I do.
yeah, let's hear them. Or do you want me to ask you some questions? Because I have a few.
Ask me some questions.
Okay. First of all, do you think he killed himself or do you think he was killed?
How about both?
Yeah, well, that's true because a lot of people, the I've heard a lot of people say, well, he killed himself, but he had help. I've heard that, you know.
Okay, so He was identified as a suicide risk by Federal Bureau of Prisons when he was locked in the detention center there.
Right. Right.
So they made his cellmate an assassin, Nicholas Tartaglione, who pleaded guilty to 4 cartel hits and was a cop.
Uh-huh.
So just a few hours prior, they removed Tartaglione from the cell. What if he and Tartaglione had a conversation, something like this? You know, Jeffy, if you don't do yourself, I'm going to have to do you, and you won't like it, I promise. You know, something like that. I'm
Yeah,
just
right.
supposing. I don't know that Tartaglione did that, but
My whole show is
but
based on speculation, Nils, so go ahead.
well, I mean, it's as good as anything else we have. We can't completely
Right.
trust the government,
Right.
and I can tell you why. Um,
You mean
the
why
man
you
who
would say
was
this?
well, okay,
Yeah.
so how about Jim Dennehy, the special agent in charge of Southern District of New York FBI, who had all of the files, all of the evidence, and was ordered by Pam Bondi to release them to her after he humiliated her by pretending to have released everything to her. And then the next day he quits. He doesn't quit the case. He doesn't quit that office. He quits the FBI. Okay, so let's ask ourselves a few questions about Mr. Dennehy. Dennehy gives this instruction to the rest of the FBI to dig in, to outlast the current regime, you know, out
Right.
of out of their highly styled ethics or whatever is going on there. There are great people at the FBI. Jim Dennehy clearly wasn't one of them.
All right.
Okay, so what he quits. Was Dennehy a bank robbery guy? Was he a bank fraud guy? Did he handle major international syndicates of criminality? Did he work on missing persons cases for children? He did not. Jim Dennehy was a counterintelligence man. And if you take a criminal case and make it a counterintelligence case, you have all sorts of rules and regulations and ways to say to the attorney general, well, we've given you every single thing we have, I
Well,
promise.
Nils, does that mean he was actually also working for someone else? I want to be clear on this. I would like, is that what
I
you?
don't know that he's working for somebody else other than the fraternity that he's a member of.
All
They
right.
did the same thing with John Durham. John Durham was supposed to get complete access to everything in Crossfire Hurricane, and Crossfire Hurricane was a counterintelligence investigation. It was recently revealed that 90% of the evidence, the 302s, et cetera, on Crossfire Hurricane were concealed from Durham during the pendency and conduct of his investigation, which is why his report, you know, it had a lot of information in it. He indicted one man who was indicted in D.C., which is where Merrick Garland wanted him indicted. And the reason they wanted him indicted in D.C. was because 96.7% of the voters there, who will be the jury pool, are government employees and registered Democrats.
Right.
You know, they're not going to conduct the trial in Wyoming. You know, they're not going to,
Yeah.
you know, imagine that, right? So Jim Dennehy. Okay. And then let's look at the context of what it was that Jeffrey Epstein was doing, won't we? Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein's running a honey trap. He's got this beautiful Pitcairn Island down there in the Caribbean,
Yeah.
beautiful young women. He's got his friend and colleague, Ghislaine Maxwell. And what do we know about Ghislaine? She's got tripartite citizenship. She's a citizen of France. She's a citizen of the UK. And by extension, all of the British Empire. She can go to any of those
Right.
places. Why didn't she run? I mean, the
Right.
French hid Ira Einhorn for 35 years.
And just in
Okay.
25 words, how do you even pull that off? I wonder, how do you get citizenship in 3 places? I don't understand. How do you
Well,
even do it?
I'm not done with that. Oh,
Okay.
Mr.
All right. Sorry.
Peters, it gets better. Do you know anything about her father?
Oh,
About
well, oh,
Gigi's
no. Yeah,
father?
her father was a famous guy, and also, Robert Maxwell, he supposedly killed himself, or what is like what his death is really suspicious, right?
Okay, so Robert Maxwell was a Czecho national who, in the 1930s, fled to Great Britain and was an operative in the UK British military, but his profile looks like classic MI6.
Yeah, right,
So, or Bond villain, or Mossad, or what if
right,
he's all three? Right.
right.
So So what if Ghislaine isn't the subordinate, the girlfriend of Jeff Epstein, Well, what if she's the case officer?
Right.
What if she's the one running the show and
Like,
Epstein is just the hotelier?
yeah.
And the targets aren't Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and that sort of
No,
thing. The
no, they aren't.
targets are the shit flies who are always attracted to wealthy, connected
Right.
men.
I
And
figured that out. Right.
you want to work them for what's in their phones, who they know. Where are you going next? Oh, you're going to Brazil. We need a favor in Brazil. And this is how you're going to do it. And Epstein and Gigi weren't the ones doing the blackmail. What if it's the men behind the scenes doing the blackmail? They're just the facilitators. And all of it worked out reasonably well. And then Prince Andrew blunders into the trap, right? And you can't have that.
Yeah,
You
'cause
can't
he's
have him
stupid as hell.
wedging his wee wee into the situation so that it's time to shut the operation down, right?
That's what he did.
Right.
What a stupid dork.
So in 2008, Jeff goes up on charges for this, and he gets like the minimal. But what was his name? Acosta, the U.S.
Yeah, I
attorney,
think
says
so. It was a
he's an
con
intelligence guy. You
Yeah,
know,
right.
why we go? Well, because it's an intelligence op. Well, obviously, it's an intelligence operation.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Well,
so the
okay,
reason.
Nils, who for who?
Oh,
That's the real question then, isn't it? I mean, I
okay.
had
So who's
I
protecting them?
I'm gonna I had Bill Walton on this show, big time CEO, just 2 weeks ago. And since he said this in public, I'm gonna repeat it. He said that his sources tell him that the whole operation was set up by Mossad. That's what he says. I don't really
Yeah.
know. He would know. He knows people, you know.
Okay, but the question isn't who's protecting Ghislaine and who protected Jeff. The question is who were they protecting?
Yeah,
Who were
right,
they reporting to?
right.
And it could very easily be Mossad. They've run honey traps before, but I'm going to say something in Mossad's favor here.
All right.
Mossad is meticulous.
Yeah,
Mossad rarely makes mistakes.
that's true. We know that. We know that for a fact. You're absolutely right. They very seldom screw up.
Right. And when you look at Jeffrey Epstein is a limp noodle.
Yeah,
Okay, he, you know, he's such a weakling that Nicholas Tartaglione can talk him into dangling himself in his cell.
right,
If
right.
if if this was a Mossad operation, they'd do him themselves,
Yeah,
or maybe. But okay, so maybe this is the reason Gigi or Ghislaine decided to stay in the United States rather than flee because she felt safer here than she would be in Europe.
right.
Okay, so I don't know. It might have been a Russian operation for all I know. And the Russians have used Brits, French, and Americans over and over again to conduct their operations. The
You think that
Rosenbergs were Americans.
do you think
Morris
there's
and
any
Lona
chance
Cohen were Americans.
do you think there's any chance that it was a American operation?
Oh, yes, and I'll tell you why. Because it got completely fucked up. That's the best way to tell it that the CIA was involved. Okay, so
Yeah, because that's what we do, huh?
well, okay, so the CIA used to be pretty goddamn good. Okay. In 1977, Stansfield Turner, under orders of Jimmy Carter, fired 700 of their commandos, their real stud, their warriors, right? The
Uh-huh.
men and women who could cross borders under NOC and risk their lives in foreign countries and did it over and over and over again and brought the goods home. That's why we were utterly blind in Iran in 1979, was because those people were gone from the CIA. Taking them out of the CIA changed the CIA from a risky business to analysis heavy. And once it became analysis heavy, it's like trying to redecorate the Titanic once it's already resting on the sand.
Right,
Okay,
right. Well,
so
hold it, Nils, did the
yes, sir.
Carter administration do that just because they were tired of all that dirty little violent stuff? Is that were they just like being good liberals and just want to wash their hands of it?
Well, the Rockefeller Commission was the first thing that really looked at some of the activities of the CIA. Um, I'm going to make an argument that's unpopular in conservative circles. We need a CIA, and we need a CIA that is focused outward, not inward.
Right, right.
We need a CIA that can cross borders and kill people who need to be killed.
Yeah. No, I
And
agree with you totally. As a matter of fact, I was under the impression that by law they're not supposed to operate within the United States. Isn't that true? I mean, they probably don't care about laws, but I don't know.
well, okay, so that was the idea. Okay, so pre-Rockefeller Commission, James Jesus Angleton ran operations in the United States all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. And James Jesus Angleton was hated by the rest of the CIA because he always knew that the CIA had been infiltrated at one level or another. And some people considered him a paranoid nut. I think James Jesus Angleton's an American hero for most of what he did. There are people who are deeply conflicted about Angleton. It's like people who are conflicted about Henry Kissinger.
Yeah.
Kissinger was a New World Order guy, all of that. They always forget the sacrifices Henry Kissinger made as a young man. He was a U.S. Army sergeant who, as a counterintelligence agent, ran an entire province of Germany after the war and harnessed former Nazi spies to identify Soviets and other bad operators targeting the United States military, and he ran them smoothly and mellifluously. You have to have men like Gordon Liddy, Howard Hunt, that sort of thing.
Right. So, do you think? And this, this is hypothetical. I'm not a rhetorical question. Do you think when it comes to like that sort of example of Kissinger, I would say kind of like the Robert Moses scenario in New York City, where you got a guy who started out extremely virtuous and then very slowly went into complete corruption. Do you think maybe that's what's going on there or not? And like I said, not a rhetorical question. I actually want to know.
With Kissinger or with no Kissinger was carrying out the orders of presidents. So he worked for Richard Nixon, and this is what Richard Nixon wanted done. It's an unpopular way of looking at things, but this was the post-war order. We involved ourselves in the United Nations, which was the beginning of this NWO stuff. And since then, it's proven to be a disaster. The United Nations hasn't increased peace. The United Nations foments violence and enables people to use proxies to do the violence that their countries wouldn't otherwise do.
I totally agree with you completely. Or at the very best, all it does is spend money on nothing.
Well, it doesn't spend it on nothing. I mean, come on. They've made a whole class of millionaires in Africa and Latin America, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Speaking of Bond villains, so
yeah. Okay. I stand corrected.
so the nature of the CIA changed in 1977, and the CIA is look how the media buffed the balls of Valerie Plame. Remember, they pretended that she was Mata Hari and she was heroic and all that stuff. She never crossed a border undercover. She was an analyst, and she had an ear to operations. Her husband was in the State Department. These weren't spies; they were espiocrats.
Yeah, they literally worked in an office.
Right, they're espiocrats. They're bureaucrats and espionage, and that's what Brennan and Clapper and the rest of these ball buffers are. That's all they are. They're not spooks. James Bamford, the author who wrote all about the NSA, wrote some great books. The Puzzle Palace is an interesting book. He keeps calling them spooks. They're not spooks. In the vernacular of the trench coat and dagger world, those are espiocrats. A spook is a man or a woman who crosses the border with a fake passport and, carries a bomb, carries a camera, spirits someone out. Right. Those are spooks, okay? Yeah. And it's a disservice, it's a disrespect to the men and women who actually risk their lives to protect this country to call a no-good, four-flushing, low-rent cocksucker like Brennan a spook. John Brennan wouldn't make a pimple on Gordon Liddy's ass, okay?
Well, Nils, how do you solve the problem? I mean,
how do you solve?
Like, do you
You
literally
clean
just,
house. You
yeah, you
clean house.
clean out.
Okay. The way that you do it is all of these agencies like USAID, the State Department, the men in striped pants, all of this. It's all the assholes with, garbage degrees from asshole factories. They've
Yeah,
gone through Harvard and Princeton and Yale and that sort of thing. If I were going to reform the CIA, I'd go down to I'd go down to Coronado and over to Virginia Beach and to Fort Bragg, and I'd look for majors and captains who've been badly injured afield in special warfare, and I'd put them and the female counterintelligence officers and interrogators from the military. I'd make them in charge of our civilian intelligence agencies. You don't want risk averse people. You
right.
want people who have been there and done it and can make a hard decision quickly. And it's the decision making more than anything else. There's some secrets to special warfare, and I'll tell you an essential one that isn't obvious to everyone. You see Green Berets and Force Recon Marines and SEALs going through all of this arduous physical training to be selected for further training. In selection, they're not looking for a physical specimen. Yeah, they want you to be physically healthy. They're putting you through those exercises to identify an emotional quality. And it's not just that you're tough. You have to be able to quantify toughness, Mr. Peters. And the toughness that they're looking to identify is the ability to deal with ambiguity under stress. There
Uh-huh.
is no rarer human emotional quality that you can find in a man or a woman than that right there.
I do a lot of we do a lot of discussion on the show on UFOs, and one thing I figured out, and I don't know if I'm not even trying, don't even want to question you whether you buy any of this shit or not, but the thing is, it does appear obvious that both from a military and a scientific standpoint, the U.S. military, when it comes to dealing with this UFO issue, looks for people that are basically out of the box. They look for people that don't really fit in anywhere. It's exactly kind of what you're talking about. It's like they're not looking for the most qualified or the most influential or the most educated person. They're looking for people that kind of like can deal with unusual shit. And it seems like that part of the military still exists. But I mean, what you're saying about the CIA, I totally believe. I totally buy
Well,
what you're talking about.
we're not going to find a lot of those people in the general and flag officer ranks. We have a lot of apple polishers who've been unnecessarily promoted in an unwarranted fashion. When I say majors, that's the lowest rank of field grade officer you can find in the Army, Air Force, or Marine Corps, okay?
Uh huh.
Or lieutenant commanders in the Navy. And they are often the most competent officers who took risks and didn't get to promote with the guys who knew how to perfectly polish someone's ass with their tongue. Okay,
Right. Right.
the sycophants.
Yeah.
And that the way that we fought these forever wars with no clear objective, it helps matriculate the ones who have no ability or talent in anything other than sycophants. And I think the preeminent sycophant within the United States military that I can identify is Wesley Clark, who was a creature of the Clintons. He was number one in his class at West Point. Some people think he's great. I have no use for the man. Um, he led the war in Kosovo, and the war in Kosovo, many have theorized, is the germination point for the conflict with Putin. The Russians have always regarded the Serbs as their baby brothers.
Uh
They
huh.
went to war and destroyed the Russian Empire trying to protect Serbia in 1914 to 1918. Okay, and it was a mistake. There was no point to bombing the hell out of Belgrade to save the Kosovars. Who the hell are the Kosovars? Well, let me tell you, our special warfare teams find them in Al Qaeda and ISIS all over the Middle East. You'd think the Kosovars would be grateful, like the Bosnians were, for U.S. intervention. No, they don't give a rat's ass about us. Okay,
Uh-huh.
So that was a total waste of money and time and everything. It's another thing that Bill Clinton can't run away from fast enough. In fact, you can't find any aspect of the Clinton legislative regime that they haven't run away from. RFRA, Defense of Marriage Act, Graham Leach Bliley, whatever. The Clintons ran away from it all after the fact, and the political media drove their getaway car shamelessly.
Nils, I think we'll leave it at this, okay? You and I have been talking for a while. You're one of the
have I offended you, Mr. Peters? Have I said
no,
something?
no, the opposite. You're one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. I want you to come back, okay? We can talk. We can talk some more. I just don't like to do interviews longer than about an hour. I know it's very fashionable now to do these 3-hour interviews, but I don't think anybody with a life wants to watch anything that long. I just don't.
You don't like watching Hunter Biden?
Just, Nils, this is the part I don't get. He actually got on television and said, there was no crime in that laptop, which is the biggest bunch of bullshit ever. It's like, you could not be more wrong. First of all, blowing hookers is a crime. Just that alone.
Well,
what the hell?
Okay, so all right, so who's keeping track? Isn't Bill Clinton's brother Roger a cocaine dealer, or was he a cocaine dealer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not necessarily. I'm not complaining about that per se. I'm complaining about the hypocrisy of he's saying there's no crime. That's the thing. It's like
there's no crime that he hasn't gotten away with. Okay.
That's true. You're absolutely right.
I think it's kind of tragic. I don't think he's a dumb man, but he's certainly done a lot of stupid shit for a man who's not dumb.
I know. I agree. He's kind of a useless individual, basically. Yeah.
And unnecessarily so. Now, I'll give you just really quickly an example of a man who learned and may actually be pretty good now, and it's Jesse Jackson Jr. He did some prison time, and you'll notice that nobody pardoned Jesse Jackson Jr.
Yeah, I got to admit, I'm not too familiar with him. I mean, I know. Well,
he went to federal prison for political corruption, but he didn't stand a chance having a father like Jesse Jackson Sr. Okay, in the same way that Hunter didn't stand a chance having a father like King Potato. Jesse Jackson Jr. is an interesting guy, and I hope that he gets his life. I hope Hunter gets his life together. I don't hate these guys. I hate the milieu that they moved in. I hate the way that our shit-gibbon political media drove their getaway car over and over again and gaslit America, that sort of thing. But I don't hate them. I want them to get well.
Well, next time you come on, Nils, we got to talk about that whole shitload of media there, because that's a good hour conversation right there. And of course, I'm kind of, this is kind of my milieu too. So it's like I understand what's happened here, but I still kind of don't believe it. Maybe it's because I'm just a naive individual. I don't know. The reason I like to talk to guys like you. Naivety is my middle name, Nils. It's very unfortunate.
Well, I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, so have me on again if you dare.
Yeah. No, okay, I'll take you up. Totally. Matter of fact, it'll be before the end of the year for sure. Okay.
You have a fantastic evening, and thank you.
By the way, one more thing. When is your memoir coming out?
In June of 2026, just in time for Father's Day. If you wanted to ruin your father's life,
well, you'll be on before then, but we'll definitely have you on to preview that for sure. So,
all right, it'd be my sincere pleasure.
I totally enjoyed this, Nils. Thank you very much. Really.
Thank you, sir.
You take care. All right. Thank you. I talk to more and more fascinating people all the time. It's like, man, I love that guy. I just do. Next time I go to Los Angeles, I'm going to have lunch with him if he's free. It's like, that's fantastic. That was terrific. And yeah, you heard a few things I bet you haven't heard before. And the one big quote that stuck out, what did he say about psychopaths? He said, basically, they're people who are they're rewarded for random acts. I gotta go back and listen. I don't. It's like anyway, just fascinating, just incredible. That's Nils Grevillius there, and yeah, we will. I took it off the screen. I had it. I had a copy of his book. He's written 4 novellas as Luke Fitz, I think it is. Luke Fitz. And I was going to ask him about that because his illustrator is named Bruce Litz. So I don't know if that was where he got the name from or whatever. But anyway, those books sold quite well. Like he's right. He wrote them about 10 years ago. But I guess they've done pretty well. And yeah, he's been around the block a few times. So it's part 2 of our show. I call it the Gymcast. We're going to talk about a few things in the news here that didn't make the real news. Okay, you know how this is. First of all, there's Mark Christopher Lee, who's a UFO investigator in Britain. He claims, and of course he won't name the guy because he can't, because the guy probably violated a security oath by telling him this. But there's supposedly a high-level British intelligence officer now come forward as saying that the Brits, UK, has 3 crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. Now, that's never been, supposedly we have about 10 here. Hal Puthoff, the last guy who talked about it. My only claim in this entire subject is that I know for a fact we have at least 6 and probably 9 or more crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. I've been saying that for about 20 years. Hal Puthoff, a very famous physicist, he said that I'm surprised he said this because I don't know if he violated his security oath by saying this, but he said, according to what he knows, we have 10. That's the last he heard. And he just said this was on Joe Rogan or something like that just a few weeks ago. Anyway, Mark Christopher Lee claims now that there's a guy, and I don't know if it's MI6 or whatever, but he said a high-level British intelligence agent officer told him that the Brits have 3. That's what he's been told. Now, here's another thing. A guy named Dennis Asberg posted a couple weeks ago, and he's the head of what's called the Ocean X team. They discovered the Baltic Sea anomaly. Was it 2011? Yes, in June of 2011. There's a thing in the Baltic Sea between Norway and Finland that looks like a flying saucer that crashed into the ocean. That's what it looks like. It's perfectly round. I think. Let me see. It's 21 meters across, about 70 feet. It has a dome, has a dome top, and also there is a giant gouge in the ocean floor that looks like where it maybe slid into or something like that. Now they've been going down there trying to get good pictures of this thing, but believe it or not, when they get close to the object, all their electronics fail. Now they're trying again. They're going to try again. They have they've done a new now, and that was 2011. Now the technology has improved greatly in the last 14 years, so they're going to go down and try to inventory this object. It's highly unlikely that it's natural. That's all anybody says. It looks like a piece of machinery laying on the seafloor, and it's round. And like I said, there's a big gouge in the ocean. So anyway, Dennis Asberg, the guy who discovered this thing 14 years ago, he said that he has come into information now, irrefutable data that he says of so monumental, they're going to release it, but he has to confirm it, or they're preparing a peer review paper to release it. But he said it's going to change humanity. So I don't know what it is. No one does. He won't say what it is, but he said it's so disturbing. It basically traumatized him, is what he said, to look at this evidence. And he won't even say what it's about. He won't say if it's UFO related, whatever. He won't. All he says is going to be a complete game changer. So that's going to be really interesting. But that could. I mean, he's alluded to the fact this could take months, and he's been very specific about this. That this is first of all, he says it's data. It's no speculation here at all. He says it's hardcore evidence of something. Ross Coulthart, the guy who writes for the Australian journalist who appears on News Nation, he's come out and said that he now has heard from two very well placed sources that the Tic Tac things that were flying around the U.S. Nimitz down in the Pacific, down by San Diego years ago, 27 to 20, I was 2011, 24, 2004, and 2011. He says that they were manufactured by Lockheed Martin, and I said that too. I said when this thing first came out, I said, yes, this is all based on extraterrestrial technology, but those specific things are ours. I said that. You can go back and look at shows I've done. I've been saying this forever, and now he says he's confirmed it, that those are actually human-made devices. Yes, but we have them because we've acquired extraterrestrial technology, mostly through crash retrievals. I'm not going to speculate. There's people who talk about the fact that we're in contact with the ETs. I have no idea, none. It could be not. But I know we have these crashed spacecraft. I know that. So, which means if we have crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft, that means there's extraterrestrials, and that's the reason I've been going on about this forever. But whether we've actually been given technology, there are people who've talked about the fact that there have been supposedly some of these spacecraft have been left intact, and it appears they've been left specifically for us to find them. I've heard people talk about that. I don't know about that either. Bob Lazar said of the 6 machines he saw, like 2 or 3 of them seemed highly wrecked, but at least a couple of them were in pristine condition. So I don't know. That's what he said, and that gets back to what talking to Mr. Grevillius about this, about the fact that Lazar is one of those people who was involved tangentially in the military, who seemed to be recruited for this specific program. I would say very precisely because he did not have legitimate credentials. Stan Friedman never bought Bob Lazar's story because he said, first of all, it was obvious he didn't go to any of the schools, and the school like Cal Poly and that sort of thing, and MIT, because there's no evidence of attending there. Although George Knapp says he has recovered a boatload of people who said they went to school at those places with Bob Lazar. And Lazar's always contended or kind of intimated that the government wiped his records, and I kind of figured that's true. So anyway, Lazar is one of those people who fits that profile. He was not what you would call a standard physicist, and never has been, and probably never will be. But he didn't know enough about the subject to probably tinker those machines. So anyway, so that's that's Coulthart saying that we built those things, and I believe him. Then and I'm going to end with this tonight. This is crazy, and this is the reason I do this. I try to come up with news that you've never heard before. All right, there's a scientist named Dr. Andrew Gallimore. He's a PhD in biological chemistry, and he studied computational neuroscience. He's also a drug user. He's used the drug DMT. Now, Gallimore figured out that the DMT has been around forever. There's this, and I can never pronounce the name of it. There's this drug used by the tribes at the Amazon called ayahuasca. Is that what it is? That's actually becoming increasingly popular in the U.S. And these are all natural substances. These are not formulated in a laboratory. That you get DMT out of some certain plant in the Amazonian jungle. I can't remember what it is. Gallimore's figured out, also after he's taken EMT trips and after talking to other people, he suddenly realized that basically every person who used this drug had the same experience. Now, this is completely unlike like LSD or any other drug you can name where you get high and you go off into some dreamland. No, he said he's figured out, and apparently by implication, people are confirming this, that every person who takes the DMT drug in whatever form it is ends up having the same experience. And it's not so much that they have the same dream, they end up in the same place. They don't necessarily have the same interaction, but they end up in the same dream world. And that dream world has the same character, not characters, but species of people in it, and no humans. That's the other thing. It's not just that there's certain species in this dream world that everybody sees. There's also, you never see any humans ever. And apparently one of the things they're calling machine elves, which are, and this was not in the article, but I put this together. They're kind of like the minions off the Pixar movie thing. They're apparently little machine-like creatures that are very jovial and very playful and like mischief, and they're very small. I don't know how small very small is, but there's a ton of them everywhere. And they enter, and you can interact with them and they'll interact with you. And then there's praying mantis types beings, taller beings that are kind of darker and kind of like run the show. And anyway, there's species that people run into. All the people that take this drug see the same species in their dream, well, if you want to call it a dream. So Gallimore is now proposing that this is not a dream. He's saying this is a real place. And he thinks there's a possibility that this drug actually opens a dimensional portal for the people taking it where you actually enter another dimension. It's just crazy shit. It's just, I mean, how do you, I mean, but the problem is he's got a point. How can every person who takes this drug end up in the same place? That's crazy. That's crazy too. We understand LSD. We understand weed. We understand all sorts of crap. You know, you go off, you have a high, and you end up with a crazy hallucination, right? Something happens. Who knows what it is? That's not what happens here. You all end up, everybody who takes this drug ends up in the same place, you know, and that's, first of all, it's brilliant that he puts this together. I mean, it really is that he figured this out. But no one who's done the drug is disputing him. He's talked to not millions, he's talking to a zillion people who've done this, and they all say the same thing. They all see the machine elves. They all see the praying mantis people. It's like, well, that's weird. You know, and then the question is, are our brains hardwired to create the same experience? You know, that's weird too. What do you say about that? Okay, so maybe it's not a real place like Gallimore thinks it is. But yeah, just the fact that your brain is hardwired to create the same experience. This is one of the theories about near-death experiences. I mean, for all practical purposes, every person who has a near-death experience basically experiences the same thing. The only thing is it's so otherworldly, people don't know how to describe it. But if you get past, you know, once you listen to the stories, you start to realize people are basically talking about the same experience, basically. So if that's not a place, if you're not going somewhere, is your mind hardwired to create that? Well, that's really fucking weird too. It's like either way, it's weird. It's like the same thing like Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia said about the kids who said they'd been reincarnated. Now I'm going to tell the story really quick before we leave here. I told it several times on the show. A guy named Ian Stevenson he interviewed about 700 kids during the 60s and 70s. This is way pre-internet. Who said they're all under the age of 5. Most of them are about 3 years old. Who claim they were other people in a previous life. Now, first of all, it's, you know, there like I said, there was no internet in the 1970s. So where you even get these ideas is kind of weird. But these kids, and so their parents would call Stevenson and say, "There's something wrong with my son. Please come talk to him." And Stevenson would actually go talk to him in person and interview them and ask them very specific questions. What was your name? Where did you live? Who were you married to? What were the name of your kids? What did you do for a living? Where did you work? Do you know where the building was where you worked? Very specific questions. In 70% of those instances, all that information checked out. The kids were right. And so Stevenson came to there's only two possible conclusions. Either those kids were actually reincarnations of previously dead people, one, or somehow they had tapped into some universal database that held the memories of another person and was replaying them in their mind. Now, even if number 2 is true, it doesn't matter which one's true. That's freaking mind-blowing. Either one of them is mind-blowing. And that's my point here. Either one of those things is mind-blowing. Either you're going to another place or your brain is creating the experience, is hardwired to create this experience. And either one of those things is mind blowing. And with that, folks, I'm going to leave you for tonight. So tomorrow, what do we got come on tomorrow? I got to check. We got Francis Menton, the lawyer turned economist. He's the author of the Manhattan Contrarian blog. He's coming on tomorrow. We've had another fascinating show. God knows I love doing this. I really appreciate you watching. I really do. I hope you like listening to these people as much as I do, because God, it's like we've been on a real hot streak here, and it shows, because I want to thank you. Our subscribers are going up, so thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are, and good night to you wherever you may be. I'm Jim Peters. I'll see you tomorrow night, everybody. 9 p.m. Eastern. Take care.